this exhibition by explaining the process behind the process. Process is a word that we hear a lot these days to describe contemporary art. Thanks to the artists of the last century, freedom of expression was won, and this meant that public acceptance allowed and encouraged artists to experiment. And as a result, they brought forth innovation and new media that the 21st century is just beginning to experience. And I want to thank those artists very, very much. And as for process, art makers, some of whom are here, know that the process begins sometimes many years before the actual product is created. To explain that here, this exhibition really begins with Climbing the Jade Mountain. It's a poem by Barbara Crooker, and it's hanging next to this piece, which is also named Climbing the Jade Mountain. All of the Jade Mountain work that you see here are part of an assessment desire to explore the metaphors that I met in that single poem, which I read for the first time in 2009. Barbara and I were paired together as artists and poets for an exhibition called the Handprint Identity Project. She's a noted American poet who has received recognition for work, and from her peers, who has received awards and published books, and her books have received awards. And I was very honored that she worked with me on that exhibition. But as a result, I just read her poem. It struck me in the heart, and it was responsible for most of the Jade Mountain, all of the Jade Mountain work that you see here, and I'll explain some of them to you. Several other pieces in this exhibition are based on Matsuo Basho's poems. They concern the natural beauty and simplicity of living with the earth and the mountain and the narrow road. I have a biographical note about Basho. He is a Japanese poet who lived during the Edo period between 1644 and 1694. And he broke away from formal constraints that governed haiku until that time. And actually killing haiku because it became such formality in creating it that there was no freedom of expression left. And so he was a rebel, and he decided to write prose to contain the haiku that he wrote. So I kind of identify with him, but only that way because he's considered the Shakespeare of Japan. I can't identify with that. He's set above so many others. So, one day I woke up and I realized that I was in the last years of my life, and not in the first years or the middle years. And I've been battling with the realization that no matter how I try, I can't go back. I can't keep the endless river, which is the title of that one, from moving me forward to a future that I'm not sure about. Options are becoming limited. Days are limited, time is limited. The frequent loss of family and friends narrows the circle of people who can attest to who I once was, and what I once did, and where I've come from, and all that I've accomplished. I have to somehow let all of that go and learn to live in the present. So at first I balked at that idea, and I got scared. And then I realized that the narrowing road is politics, the economic constraints, the deterioration of my health and mind. These are all things that I cannot and I should not worry about. The journey today becomes that much more important and that much more beautiful. I look to nature for myself a source of soothing, reassurance, and renewal. I commune with the huge tree that is outside my window that I call Grandfather Tree, and all the critters that live in it. And I commune with the evening sky, and on my daily drive to work, I'm very fortunate. I'm very familiar with all of the meadows and the swans and the tended lawns on my drive in, and they greet me, and I'm very comforted and very thankful. Basho, I'm going to quote him here. He says that every day is a journey, and the journey itself is home. So, you can understand why I was influenced by his quote. Concerning the painting process that you see, technique is often a result of philosophy. And to explain mine, over time I have come to align myself thin layers of pigment and small amounts of pigment suspended in the medium wavelengths. And I build up glazing, layer after layer, and the color seems to float on the surface and it becomes three-dimensional. And that is something that is very gratifying to me. It eludes you, but it's there. You kind of sometimes have to look at it, but it's there. And the methods used by the American tonalists of the 19th century were vital to the minimalists and the field painters of the 20th century. So I thank, they're not all American, but I thank Whistler, Stockman, Dow, Innes for inspiring Rocco and Gray and Kahn, from whom I have taken inspiration and instruction. I found that applying layer after layer of paint as though it were pure liquid atmosphere allows for a meditative process. And so when you're looking at it, it just enables you to become actually part of what you're doing, part of what you're thinking, and part of your surroundings. So I appreciate that. And this frees my mind. I can turn toward a poetry of color and intuitive and a very gratifying conclusion. These most recent works are relevant to that philosophy. With a very limited palette and imagery, things are about to change this week. It suggests a choice that the viewer must decide upon. It's either going to storm or it's going to clear. And you can play with that. And I like that. And it wasn't as deliberate as you think. It just kind of slowed and happened. The departure, which is this piece, refers directly to Basho's poem that's alongside of it, which you can read. If we have time, I'll read these two. But I think the piece that I'm most pleased with in this exhibition is Ice Time, which is this piece. There's no reference. It's a simple, unself-conscious expression, and I attest to that. And I like it because it's so pure. It's a prelude to the work that is yet to be created, and it represents a really marked place in the road on this road. My goal is to be as honest as I can in my work. I don't try to fix it. I try to accept it. And thereby I accept myself. And I can present it to the viewer for their acceptance. I always hope that there is more beneath the surface than upon it, and that viewers will see themselves in the work as well as I present myself, actually. Color and light, color and light, color and light. That's the mantra of the tonalist, and it's become mine as well. As this road narrows, I've had to slow down. I've had to discard unnecessary things and make room each day for things that truly matter and pick up more of the spiritual that will soon enough become the only reality. And I'm going to close my little talk by reading a couple of poems to you. First, I'd like to just mention that a couple of weeks back, Barbara Strasco, who is a poet and was the poet laureate of Lancaster, she and I collaborated on an exhibition that was here last year called Poetry and Conservation. I think that's what it was. Preservation. Poetry. She and I also worked together, and I responded to some of her poems as well. Well, she had a class. She's working on a Poetry Paths project in town. If you don't know much about that, it is establishing a landmark class within the city limits containing poetry. That is kind of significant for Lancaster. It's a really wonderful idea. It will be here for many years to come. And Barbara was chosen I guess, her poem was chosen as the first in selection. But what happened was she invited me to be with fourth graders a couple of weeks back, who she had been talking with about responding to painting by writing poetry. And so she invited me, and I talked with them a little bit, and I brought some images for them. And I really want to read a poem that her poem was chosen as the first in selection. But what happened was she invited me to be with fourth graders a couple of weeks back, who she had been talking with about responding to painting by writing poetry. And so she invited me, and I talked with them a little bit, and I brought some images for them. And I really want to read a poem that one of those fourth graders wrote, based on this work, which is a study. I have in my mind, again, being obsessed with Barbara Flicker's poem, on the Jade Mountain. I want to install something very, very large. I want to create a room full of these series of golden mountains. And that's what this is all about. This is the second study in that direction. Of course, it's not a finished painting. It's just a study of my idea. But I want to read this poem. I'm very happy to do that. The poet's name is Demetrius Williams, and he's in the 4th grade at the Wharton Elementary School. And he talks about the road now.
I wrote down that
the road is as
tonight was
orange
going to
as
be
the shining sun, and as dark as the
boring.
sky.
What's the next boring?
The brush movement is as wavy as the wind, and as calm as a star. A musician's beat flows through me as if the wind was through me. It looks like it's a century for me to find my way, as if it were a trap. As I keep on walking, the light dims, but no matter how dark it gets here, you will always be with me. I'm really It's so beautiful. So I think that it can stand itself very well against the poems of Basho and Barbara. But I did want to read you a few haiku of Basho. To kind of, and he's talking to invite your questions during the conversation with us, and just write. The silence is profound. I sat, feeling my heart begin to open. Lonely stillness, a single cicada's cry, sinking into stone. The moon and sun are eternal travelers. Even the years wander on. A lifetime adrift in a boat, or in old age leading a tired horse into the evening. Every day is a journey, and the journey is always home. Thank you.